Blog Talk Radio.
All right, everybody, good afternoon. Another edition of ATL Sports coming to you live from the ATL. I'm Todd Corder along with my sidekick, JJ, on the other side of the ATL. Mark Mancini out on the left coast in Los Angeles, and Wayne, our producer, in Memphis. Guys, good afternoon. Let's start the show off by asking how everybody can get a hold of you. JJ, my friend, can they get a hold of you at?
Yeah, find me on Twitter at JJGetYouOne. We're 62 days away from Major League Baseball opening day. And, hey, Ken Griffey Jr.'s got a job back in baseball. He's a senior advisor to Commissioner Rob Manfred. Going to be developing youth baseball development. I love it. I think it's awesome. I'm doing good. At JJGetYouOne. Wayne, how do we contact you,
my
friend?
Hey, I was going to say, JJ, speaking of get you one, the Atlanta Falcons have never gotten one. Wayne, and how can we reach you?
I'm at RWY Junior, JUNIOR, and I'm just excited about the NHL myself because the Maple Leafs are sitting 2 ahead of the Habs right now.
Wayne, are you a junior by chance?
I sure am.
Okay, that's where the junior come from. I thought so, but I wasn't 100% certain. Mark, how are you today in Los Angeles? How can they reach you?
I'm doing good. They're covering puddles. We had a rainstorm in Los Angeles, so you know how that is. They send out all the reporters to cover the puddle, how much water is in it. They bring the ruler out, the 9 yards. So other than that, you can reach me at ManciniSports@yahoo.com.
All right. It was wet. It's wet in Los Angeles. As they say in Seinfeld, it's dry here. Wet is wet. Dry is dry. A home run is fair ball. A foul ball is foul. All right, guys, let's go into football where toe meets leather. Let's talk about the National Football League. The Texans' Deshaun Watson, he's unhappy. Boo-hoo. He wants out of Houston. He has not spoken to the new GM, Nick Cassari, or the head coach that just came along from the Baltimore Ravens, David Cullen. So, guys, Deshaun is unhappy. It looks like he wants out. He requested that he wanted out over 2 weeks ago. It just came out today yesterday that he wanted out. I wonder how interesting that it finally came out today after they hired a head coach. The timing to me is definitely you definitely have to think about it. And anyhow, that's where we're at with Deshaun Watson. JJ, give your brief opinion on the Deshaun Watson situation.
Well, I think it's sticky, to say the least. I don't know how it got – well, we all know how it got so bad, but I think it really started back when DeAndre Hopkins was let go for what the Texans players and other fans feel was pennies on the dollar. So I think that's where this whole thing started. It stemmed from there. It hasn't seemed to get any better. I'm still one of these guys that think maybe the new GM, the new head coach, can over a period of the full offseason, maybe can get him back in the office, maybe can get him back talking. But who knows? It looks very sticky right now, and there is a bunch of teams that will be willing to back up the Brinks truck with draft picks in the Brinks truck to get this guy. He's a life-changing, game-changing, franchise-changing type player. He had a career year with only 4 wins to show for it. J.J. Watt came out and spoke to him after the last game and said, hey, man, we're sorry. We're sorry you have to deal with this. So that kind of just outlines the situation in my same opinions. It is a very sticky situation, and that's my opinion right now. If we talk about where to go, we'll talk about that probably in a little bit. But that is my opinion on the situation. Very, very sticky.
It is a sticky situation. I like the word sticky in this case. Speaking of sticky, Mark, the Texans could stick it to Deshaun Watson and decide to keep him, make him pay fines in training camp and preseason, and make him pay or sit out. Your thoughts on that?
Well, in the beginning of the year, I said Bill O'Brien needed to go. Then I said Anthony Lynn needed to go. I've been on the fence to get Jared Goff out of Los Angeles. After that Super Bowl, they gave him the big money, and it came down to the saying, he who blinks first loses. So the Rams lost on that one. But when you look at Deshaun Watson, he's a marquee player. I mean, it was a screw job with Hopkins, getting him out of there. They didn't console with him when they started to bring the new coach in and the GM and all this other stuff. So he wants out. Rumor has it, Miami could be in the mix on a 3-team trade with Chicago, with Tua going there, a bunch of draft picks going to Houston. I've heard the Jets could be in the equation with Darnold going there, the 49ers, and the one I really like, I think it's a long shot, the Redskins are in the mix here, and I'd love to see him in Washington. So, the Texans got problems. Everybody seems to have problems in Houston these days. I don't know if it's the food, the ambiance, the airport, the people. What's going on in Houston now?
Okay, but what are your thoughts, though, back to my original question of the Texans? Maybe they can't get what they want for Deshaun Watson, and they decide to stick it to him and make him play for him, or he sits out. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, hard to stick it. If you want me to allude to that, it's going to be hard for them to stick it to him. He's going to stick it to them. You saw that with Harden, and he didn't want to play. There's no turning back. This bridge is blown up. It's not burnt. It's blown completely up. He has no intentions of going there, and the Texans are in an awkward position. They're going to have to deal him.
Well, I agree with you, no question about it. They've got to deal him. And remember, Wayne, he holds the cards because he has the no-trade clause in his contract, so he can dictate where he's going. Now, him sitting out a year financially would not be good for him, but he could stick it back to the Texans by just sitting out for the year, and the Texans not getting anything for him via trade. Wayne, where's your first thought of a destination for Deshaun Watson?
Just keep Atlanta out of the mix.
Well, he's not going to Atlanta. Where's your first thoughts where he's going?
I'd say Jets or Miami.
I would say the Jets, too. The reason why is the Jets have a ton of draft picks. They have 4 first-rounders, 2 this year, 2 next year. They've got second-rounders backed up. They could deal Deshaun Watson for 2 first-round picks, and the Jets would have a 25-year-old starting quarterback in the middle of his prime, and the Jets could still build the team around him. And the Texans, who don't have capital, could get draft picks and build their team from scratch without Watson. It's a sad situation. And JJ, to finish it up, you and I had a conversation privately over the phone yesterday. We had some disagreements. You ultimately think Deshaun Watson is going to stay in Houston. Why?
I do. And at the tip of the iceberg, I think it's very similar to an older situation with Carson Palmer. Look, the Texans have control of his rights until 2028 if they really want to get technical, because they can franchise tag Deshaun Watson for 3 years. So not only is he under contract to 2025, the Texans can franchise tag him for 3 possible extra years, and then guess what? You have a 32-year-old quarterback who hasn't played if he doesn't playing for Houston. Because it looks like we have 2 teams that the front office doesn't want to trade Watson, but yet they don't want to make him unhappy. So right now I think it's a very sticky situation, as I keep on saying, because you don't know where and what the front office is thinking. Obviously, if I'm a GM, and I'm not, and I have no experience except for the fact, hey, we talk about this stuff all the time, and this is a new situation because Deshaun Watson does have a no-trade clause. So that makes the situation even more interesting because he can control where he's traded. So they can't just control him. But if you're asking me where he goes, I think a really good spot would be the Bears, because the Bears passed on him and Mahomes in the 2017 draft. Maybe they get another mulligan and try it again. But right now, I still think the Texans are going to try and work it out with Deshaun, even if it means him sitting out a year. Maybe they do some good things and they get some good players, and Deshaun's like, hey, you know what? Maybe I'll give this guy a chance. So I think there's still a lot of time before the next football game is played, and we'll see what happens. And I think it is. The Texans could make it hard on him as well. They could say, hey, if you're going to sit out, so be it. You're going to miss out on a lot of money. And it says here, if Deshaun Watson does retire, the Texans will save $21 million. So that's just a little side nugget there. I don't think he will retire, but that is why I say it's similar to Carson Palmer's situation, at the tip of the iceberg.
It's a long shot that the Texans hang on to him. It's a very long shot. He's not even talking to him. You want to get, in terms of the Texans, you want to be able to get him out of the building, get the negativity out of the building, trade him, get a couple of first-round picks. The Jets are itching. Miami's a good one, as Wayne said. They have draft capital. They have Tua. Maybe they make a switch and for a pick, and they move on and build with a younger, cheaper quarterback. Either way, the Texans are going to build with a younger and cheaper quarterback. But whoever gets Deshaun Watson is getting a 25-year-old at the height of his prime, which is very rare in the NFL. And, guys, this to me is the case. I don't want the NFL turning into the NBA when we get a disgruntled employee and all of a sudden teams are forced to deal him and we have major issues. So, that's something I do not want. Mark, what are your thoughts on that? Does this sound NBA-ish to you?
Well, I'll tell you what, and I've always been for the players across the board in all the sports. I think these owners have made a lot of money. I think these owners have sat on their high horse, and they're going to dictate the pace here, and they're going to do whatever the hell they want. And I didn't agree with the Harden thing, but you know what? When I look at Deshaun Watson, it's a total screw job. You got to communicate. You got to let people know what's going on. And when you don't communicate and you start doing this is what happens. You saw this in baseball years back with Artie Moreno. Basically, he wanted to, close the contract down on Josh Hamilton, and the Baseball Players Union said, no, you're not working that way. I think the players control the sports. Everybody else can disagree on that, but I'm going to stick with that. The players control it, and, nobody says anything when they start getting rid of these players in the middle of the season and everything. But the minute a player stands up and says, I don't want to be in this situation anymore, he's looked at as the bad guy. And I think it's a situation where the Texans need to really look at themselves in the mirror and say, hey, listen, we're going to have a morbid franchise here, even if we get going on the cheap, because you said it earlier, Todd, that if you're not winning, nobody's coming. So you better start winning. Otherwise, people are going to be heading to see Dallas Cowboy games north of you.
Well, speaking of the Dallas Cowboys, we'll get into them in a little bit. JJ, do you see the NFL becoming a little bit NBA-ish?
Not at the moment, because we just currently have one contract situation like this. So I'm not going to say it's where we have teams jumping, making super teams, things like that. So, no, I don't think it's anywhere close to the NBA, because you'll never see 5 Hall of Fame type players on the same roster usually in the NFL at the same time. Rarely. You may see it here and there, but, you see that in the NBA often now. 3, 4, 5 guys. You see it in Brooklyn right now. You got 3 future Hall of Fame guys in the starting lineup. You have DeAndre Jordan. I don't think it's like that far yet. But if players start jumping ship and not playing for teams, it'll get to be like that. And here in America, we had this conversation. The NBA ratings are dropping. They're increasing worldwide. And I don't know if you'll see that here, but that's just a stat to gnaw on. But I don't see it, though, TC. I don't see it turning in the NBA like that.
Well, I hope it doesn't either. We shall see. Wayne, I want to go back to the New York Jets with you and Deshaun Watson. You can comment on the NBA-ish if you want, but this to me is a win-win for the Jets and for the Texans. That's where he wants to go. Harden is there. KD is there. He's got other friends in New York. And the Jets can get a 25-year-old quarterback, still have a couple of first-round draft picks, and the Texans can build over because they don't have a lot of draft capital. They can pick up some draft capital, get a disgruntled employee out of there, and away we go. Your thoughts on the Jets?
Yeah, I think the Jets are probably a good landing place for him. And also, I think that the coach that the Jets have now is kind of more along his style anyway. As far as the Miami goes.
I'm sorry, Wayne, you mentioned the coach, Robert Saleh, and guess what? Former players of Robert Saleh's in San Francisco, like Richard Sherman, are all telling Deshaun Watson, this is the guy you want to go play for. So the recommendations are there. Go ahead with the Miami. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I know that Mark had mentioned Miami kind of doing a multi-team trade for him and maybe sending Tua up to Chicago. But I wonder what the chances are of that team trade, including Detroit, and the chances of Tua ending up in Detroit.
Well, we'll get to Detroit shortly. And the NBA, do you think the NFL is going NBA-ish? Answer that briefly, and then we'll go on.
No, I don't think it's anywhere near as that close as that. There's too many players in the NFL to end up like the NBA. I mean, you get players in the NFL that people don't even know who their name is, yet they're still professional NFL players. It's not quite that same atmosphere in the NBA.
I agree with that. I don't think it's there either, but I thought the question was worth asking. All right, speaking of Detroit, let's switch over to Matthew Stafford. Before you do that, you're listening to ATL Prime Sports with Todd Corder, JJ, Mark Mancini in Los Angeles, and our trusty producer, Wayne, in Memphis. We're on every Friday from 1 to 1:30 Eastern Standard Time here on Blog Talk Radio. Tell your friends, 1-347-205-9631. You can also listen to our podcast on a tape delay on Tuesday as JJ, Wayne, and I do a show on Monday nights. And on Tuesday, it'll be out. We'll put a copy of it on Twitter, and it's also out on YouTube. All right, let's shift over to Matthew Stafford and the Detroit Lions. He requested a trade, too, and the Lions are ready to deal him. JJ, your thoughts on that, and give me one team where Matthew Stafford can potentially go to make this work for Detroit and Matthew Stafford.
Well, you're right. It's another situation. This one's not so sticky. Stafford wants out, and I think this is one of the few situations where you have a disgruntled employee, in quotation marks here, and a franchise that says, you know what, we haven't built around you. Let's get you out of here. Let's get something we need, and let's get this rebuild on the road. So it's a win-win for both. One destination I'd like to see. I don't think they'll trade him in the division, but I would love to see him go to Chicago. But I do think the best destination is in the AFC, very close to the city, Indianapolis Colts. Just had Phillip Rivers retire. They have a pretty good run game. They got some good wide receivers. I think a run game is just what Matthew Stafford needs, as well as a good defense. I think he'll get a little bit of both there. I have come around to your decision, TC, that the Indianapolis Colts are the best destination for Matthew Stafford, my Georgia Bulldog, my prized possession, Georgia Bulldog.
Well, speaking of the dogs, we'll be getting to them soon, too. You know what? I'll comment on the Bears and go to Mark. There's no way in ghost chances hell the Lions are going to trade a franchise quarterback at 32 to the division rival, the Chicago Bears, unless the Bears get stupid and give up 4 first-round draft picks, and we know they're not going to do that. Mark, give me a destination where Matthew Stafford goes.
Well, I think he's probably going to go to New England, but let me just tell you about this franchise in Detroit. I'm going to bring the dynamite kegs. I'm going to light the fuse. I know you're from around there, but this franchise, I'm 59 years old. I'll be 60 in November. I haven't seen this franchise do anything. Their quarterbacks have been horrendous, and I can go back to Gary Danielson, Eric Hipple. I look at the coaching staff. I like Bobby Ross. You had Wayne Fonts. You had another guy, Caldwell, there that didn't want to shake hands with Harbaugh. I mean, this franchise is really – they haven't done nothing since the 90s when they got the division, when they went to the playoffs in '93, and I think the Redskins hammered them. So, now you bring in a guy that
they lost in the NFC Championship game.
Now you bring in a guy that's more. You bring a guy that's more suited for the UFC, or maybe he's a double for Jaws and Moonraker. But this guy's not going to last. I mean, come on. You take a guy like Stafford, you kind of show him the door. Where is the loyalty to this guy? And the one thing I'll give you in Detroit is, as far as the Lions are concerned, you've had some great running backs in Sanders and Sims. But when was the last time you had a great coach and a great quarterback there, other than Stafford maybe?
Well, you'd have to go back. Eric Kramer was a pretty good quarterback. He took the Lions to the NFC Championship game in '91. Greg Lander was a quarterback. Gary Danielson had his moments. Yes, quarterback has been an issue for the Lions over the years. They had Rodney Peete at one time. But, Jim Caldwell he never had a losing season in 4 seasons in Detroit. So that's pretty hard to do in the National Football League. You say what you want. They didn't win a playoff game under him, but he took them to the playoffs twice. It wasn't good enough, and Quinn decided to hire and bring on Matt Patricia, etc. But, Mark, give me a team for Stafford real quick. J.J. Mancini.
I'm going to stick to it like I said. I like the Patriots. I think the Patriots are going to get somebody. So that's my take on it.
All right, Wayne, what's yours?
Well, surprisingly, maybe – if that Miami thing goes through, what if Stafford ended up down in Houston?
What, you mean trade Watson for Stafford?
No. Watson goes to Miami, Tua goes to Detroit, and then Stafford goes to Texas.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to throw one out here. Mine would be Stafford going home to the Dallas Cowboys, and the Lions trading him for some picks. If Jerry Jones cannot sign Dak Prescott, who knows what can happen. That would be an interesting situation for sure, but I do agree with JJ. Indianapolis seems to be the best fit. Nobody mentioned San Francisco. You know what? They could trade Stafford and bring in they could bring Jimmy Garoppolo to Detroit. I mean, hey, they could do a 3-way, and Jimmy Garoppolo could go back to New England. Anything and everything is possible in this NFL quarterback trade/free agent frenzy. Ben Roethlisberger, just a note, said he's coming back, and he's willing to play for – he's not worried about the money. Well, he's made enough, so he shouldn't, and he wants to wheel and deal and give it one last go for the Steelers at the age of 39/40. Let's move off the NFL, and let's go to college football. JJ's baby, besides Jordan, the Georgia Bulldogs. Their quarterback room is about to get heavy. They've got Brock Vandergrift coming in this year, and JJ next year. They have Gunnar Stockton, a 5-star quarterback, the number 1 guy, changed his mind from South Carolina to Georgia. I broadcasted Gunnar Stockton's high school game his freshman year at Rayburn High School. The guy was dialing it at 50 yards in the air with a flick of the bick. Down the field, he's a dual threat. He can run. JJ, one of them quarterbacks is not going to stay after the competition. Who do you think wins the competition, and what are your thoughts about both these guys being at Georgia?
Well, here's the deal. One of them, maybe even 2 of them's got to go. Right now on campus, you have the hot hand, J.D. Daniels, who came in and won his last 4 or 5 starts. Then you have, you mentioned, Brock Vandergrift, who's coming in as Mr. Georgia football. Then you just got this guy, Gunnar Stockton. But don't forget, there's Carson Beck in the mix too. He's another 4 or 5-star athlete. So this room is full. Nick Saban's prodigy, Kirby Smart, has done a wonderful job recruiting 5-star quarterbacks. The problem has been getting one to stick. So I think JT Daniels has the upper hand. He's been in the offense for a while. But you mentioned it. This Brock Vandergrift kid is really good, and this Gunnar Stockton guy in 2 years will have a say-so when he's there as a true freshman. He can make all the throws. But right now I'm going to stick with JT Daniels as the starter this fall. We'll see what happens, but it is a full 5-star filled quarterback room for the Georgia Bulldogs. In Georgia's Dog Nation, you should be ecstatic. This is a good problem to have.
It's a great problem to have. The fact that Gunnar Stockton changed his mind tells you he's not afraid of competition. And with Brock coming in, he came, JJ, as you know, you follow high school football as well as I do in the state of Georgia. He's coming from a small single-A program going to the UGA. That's a gigantic step.
Not gigantic. It's intergalactic. It's another galaxy level. This is a huge jump. This would be quite a feat if he came in and took the starting job from someone. I would actually I would say it's one of the more impressive things I've seen in the last 10, 20 years, if it happens, folks, because single-A Georgia football private school level, there's only about 4 or 5 good schools, folks. If you watch it, it's Eagles Landing, it's a couple others, and they win it every year almost. So it's going to be a testament to see how good this kid is, but it's just going to be great competition for Georgia and their players, and you'll be able to see who the best is. And you mentioned it, TC. The kid's not scared of competition, and I like to see that.
He's got a great arm. He's dual threat. Kirby Smart already has dealt with enough quarterback controversy at Georgia. And I bring it over to you, Mark. USC would love to have one of these guys, wouldn't they?
Well, I think they would. And, the schedule just came out for some of these games, and I'm really looking for a real smash job when Ed Orgeron comes back to town here in September. LSU plays UCLA. I was looking at, I think Auburn goes up to Penn State. Alabama goes to Florida. Pitt comes down to Tennessee. So there's going to be some great games now, and I think college football is starting to get this where people want to see the big schools play some big schools. I don't need to see somebody whack Bowling Green and Appalachian State. I need to see the powerhouses play the powerhouses. So I'm really excited now moving forward. And when you look at the Pac-12, let's face it, it's the redheaded stepchild trying to keep up with Big Brother here. It's David going against Goliath. It might even be a toddler going against Goliath here. So SEC, ACC is where it's at, just like the Big East was in college basketball. Everybody else is an afterthought.
All right, we got less than 2 minutes to go, Wayne. Mark just hit the button on Tennessee football, and we'll talk more about that on Monday with the hiring of the new Tennessee football coach, Josh Heupel, coming over from UCF along with his AD, Danny White. You live in Tennessee, Wayne. Real quick, your thoughts on the hiring. We got about less than 2 minutes to go in the show.
Yeah, I'm not so sure it was a good move, Josh Heupel, but I think he got talked into it by his former AD. And as far as the Georgia quarterback situation goes, I'm not a UGA fan, but if I was, I'd be a little bit worried because I've seen that episode before, back in the fall 2020 season. Who's the UGA quarterback? And I don't know, it seems strange to me.
Well, you know what? The room is full. One of the kids will end up transferring. You can almost guarantee that. That's what they do now. In terms of Tennessee football, I'll give everyone a preview. JJ and I like the hiring. We'll explain why JJ thinks he has a chance to be more successful right off the bat than I do. We have that disagreement. We had that on the phone privately. We will bring that to you publicly on next week's edition of ATL Prime Sports. We'll be back here next Friday from 1 to 1:30. www.blogtalkradio.com. Tell your friends. 1-347-205-9631. I'm Todd Corder, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks, and listen to ATL Prime Sports next week on YouTube. We'll have the replay for you on Tuesday. Good afternoon, everybody, and have a great weekend.
Get you one. Senior Bowl this weekend, folks.